Indigrid has launched 2,250 crore InvIT IPO today, and ahead of its issue, the company has already raised 1,000 crore of investments from its anchor. Congratulations, Mr. Pradeep Agarwal, for this. This is the country's second InvIT IPO that we are talking about, and also the first one in the power space. I'd just like to understand how different is this InvIT issue from the earlier one. Also, it would be nice if you can draw a comparison between the road and the power sector projects.
Sure, Nikki. In my belief is that there will be many more such InvITs in the country across various infrastructure sectors like transport and power. If you want to know specifically, when you want to compare power transmission to a portfolio of toll road projects, the key differences are: number one, the stability of the cash flows. In the case of power transmission, the asset owners have a long-term stable known cash flow with no traffic or throughput risk. Whereas in a toll road project, as you would know, the traffic can go up, it can go down, and hence the investors carry that small bit of risk in those projects. The second bit difference is in the tenure of the assets. Power transmission assets, especially in our case, Indigrid, has two assets consisting of 8 lines and 2 substations, which have a residual life of 33 years. And this is very different from road projects, which could have a residual life of 6-10 years, sometimes less. Finally, transmission assets are perpetual in nature. Unlike BOT assets, which have a transfer clause at the end, transmission assets have no such transfer clause, and this provides a perpetual flow of return to investors even beyond the 35-year concession period. This is particularly attractive to long-term capital like insurance companies and pension funds who are looking for a long-term lock-in of their capital.
All right, moving on to the second question, that's the debt component that we are talking about. The company plans to retire its debt, but after repayment of certain debt, there is 1,000 crore of debt which will still be left on books of the company. If you could just give us a little breakup on that.
Sure. So out of the 2,250 crores that we are raising, about 1,600 crores will go to reduce debt at the asset level. That will bring the debt down from the current 70-75% to about 20-25%. This will allow us some headroom in the future to acquire more projects using the debt headroom that is available. Secondly, the balance 650 crores that we are raising will go up to the sponsor, which is Sterlite Power Grid Ventures Limited, who will use this capital basically as an equity churn and replow this capital into the balanced portfolio of greenfield projects that it owns.
All right. Having said that, the most important factor that we're looking at is obviously the returns factor for the shareholders. Believe that the yield after the calculation from the cash flow from operation on the projected basis for the 3 years turns out to be at around 11%. That said, that's the value that we're looking on for shareholders. This is, since it's a hybrid project that we're talking about, obviously it's supposed to be a notch higher than the plain vanilla bond offerings that we're looking at. So if you could just talk about it.
Sure. So I think the best way to think about returns is that this is a hybrid instrument, and by that it means that the returns will come from a combination of a cash yield and capital growth. In our case, the cash yield can be calculated looking at the numbers in the document. Plus, if you add to that a reasonable, very conservative capital growth on a post-tax basis for an individual investor who is in the highest tax bracket, you would come to a residual number of the number close to what you said. Of course, this is based on various assumptions that one has to take.
Right.
And of course, for institutions, the number will be higher because they are subject to far lower tax or sometimes nil tax.
All right, since the yield is dependent on the cash flow from operations, which is projected for the next 3 years, we've come up to a number of 11% post-tax. We've seen a dip coming in for the revenues as well as cash flow from operations from the year 2018 to 2020 as per your RHP. If you could explain this.
Sure. So Nikki, the RHP has projections only for the first 2 assets. In the first 2 assets, one of our assets, the revenue reduces in the 3rd year. The reason for that is that when we bid for projects, we have a choice as a bidder to choose a flat tariff or a front-ended tariff. Of course, it is far more beneficial for anyone to choose a front-ended tariff because then you get more tariffs up front, and that's what we have done in that particular case. Having said that, as far as the investors are concerned, they should not be worried about a dip in revenues for several reasons. First is that the way we sculpt our debt repayment, we do it in a manner so that there is a smoothing of the revenue profile, of the return profile for investors. On top of that, we have a very healthy growth portfolio. So our growth assets, the trust has a right of first offer on 8 assets, and as those assets get acquired, the returns keep increasing and the EBITDA increases for them. Ballpark, the EBITDA can grow to 4 times the current EBITDA just from the ROFO assets that Indigrid has.
All right, that was pretty much, I was coming to this question next that you already kind of partially addressed.
Yeah.
Since you said that, the InvIT has 2 projects right now, the SPVs, and further it plans to I believe it's going to be transferring 3 more projects to its InvITs, making it a portfolio of 5 projects that we're looking at. Also, the company has right of first offer on 8 out of 9 sponsors project. So this is termed out to be value accretive to the unit holders. So if you could just give me a little more details about how can it generate more revenues for the shareholders.
Sure. So as I mentioned, there are 2 projects in the beginning. There are 8 more projects. The 2 projects have a certain EBITDA which is mentioned in the document. As the balance 8 projects keep getting acquired into the InvIT quarter on quarter, they will slowly increase the EBITDA and take it to a number that is 4 times the current EBITDA. Now, of course, this expansion can't be financed by any internal accruals since the trust does not have internal accruals. It will be financed by a combination of raising debt and equity. Because of the governance methodologies, the 2-layer acquisition process, as well as the SEBI regulations, the investors can be assured that every such acquisition will be value accretive. More specifically, it will be DPU accretive, which means distribution per unit must increase post acquisition. And the way we have calculated those numbers, we have some mathematics that we have done. We understand that will generate the total return that we earlier talked about in our conversation.
So if 11% is the yield that we're looking at with this value accretion and with additional 3 projects coming into picture, what is the ballpark figure that we are working at in that case?
Okay. So Nikki, a small correction. I think, again, I can't specifically mention yield numbers since they're not in the document, so I'll have to try and answer this question from the numbers that are in the document. From the numbers that are in the document, there's a particular yield which could be close to the numbers you mentioned on a pre-tax basis.
Okay.
Right? And then you add to that a growth that comes, which will be above and beyond the number that you mentioned in the single digits. I can't give you exact numbers. And then will arrive at a pre-tax number which is fairly healthy, and then from there, depending on the tax bracket that you're in, you can arrive at a post-tax number for yourself. So that's roughly, I know I'm not giving you a direct answer, but that's what the regulation allows me to do.
All right, all the very best for your IPO. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.